President Muhammadu Buhari has directed for the suspension of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, for his involvement in the award of contracts under the Presidential Initiative on the Northeast.
The suspension is pending the outcome of the investigations into the allegations of violations of law and due process made against the SGF. In a related development, the president has ordered a full-scale investigation into the discovery of large amounts of foreign and local currencies by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in a residential apartment at Osborne Towers, Ikoyi, Lagos, over which the National Intelligence Agency has made a claim. The president has also directed the suspension of the Director General of the NIA, Ambassador Ayo Oke, pending the outcome of the investigation. A three-man committee comprising the Attorney General of the Federation and the National Security Advisor, headed by the Vice President, is to conduct both investigations and submit its report to the President within 14 days.
Well, let's go straight to Uche Igwe, Senior Research Fellow, Sussex University, United Kingdom, who joins us now via Skype to talk more on this issue. Uche, good to have you with us on the News Hour.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening.
Thank you. Also, our correspondent Mariah Olasehinde is with us live from Abuja to give us updates on these developments. Mariah, we start with you at this time. You were at the villa when this announcement was made. What updates do you have for us about it?
Okay, hello, Blessing. The news came to us as a shock, as a surprise as well at the villa, when we got the press release that the president has suspended the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Babachir Lawal, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Ayo Oke. And the suspension order, as I said, was contained in a statement by Mr. Femi Adesina, which we got. The president said Lawal was suspended in connection with the award of contracts under the Presidential Initiative on Northeast, while the NIA boss, Oke, was suspended in connection with discovery of large amounts of foreign and local currencies by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in a residential apartment at Osborne Towers and Ikoyi. But the strange thing was that while Babachir SGF, while the announcement came to us, was with Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. So while he left the Vice President after the meeting, while coming, the journalists were already waiting for him to ask him if he saw this comment. But the SGF said he didn't see this comment. That has not seen the letter yet, and we tried as much as possible to get more words from him. But how he said was, if it was the presidency that gave us the release, then we should also ask the presidency. As soon as we left, the NIA boss also drove into the presidential villa, and the journalists were already waiting for him to hear from him as well. But he couldn't withstand the journalists, and he drove back. That was what happened at the villa today.
All right, now we'll move to Uche Igwe. Uche, our correspondent just told that this came as a surprise to many at the presidential villa. Did it also come to you as a surprise? And what do you make of the move by the president?
Well, I think that it didn't come to many keen observers of the Buhari administration as a surprise. What we must have in mind is that this government came into power promising Nigerians to fight corruption. So if there is any speculations about corruption, especially about anybody connected to Buhari government, we expect the president to deal decisively with those involved. So it didn't surprise many of us. What he did is what he ought to do. And sincerely, to many of us, it's been long overdue. There are a few others who are connected to the president and who have been alleged to be one way or the other involved in issues of corruption. What we expect the president to do is not only to suspend them, but to investigate them thoroughly. And if they are found culpable, they should be sacked with immediate effect.
Uche,
for us, that's the only way that the president will restore the confidence Nigerians reposed in him when they voted him overwhelmingly in 2019
All right, Uche, if you'd allow me button here very quickly,
yes.
Since it's apparent that you support this move by the president to sack the two bosses, the NIA, let's focus on Ayo for now, how will the suspension aid in investigation? And of course, how do you think he's faltered in the cash hole in the first place?
Well, I think that it will be too early to preempt the outcome of an investigation. It is important that for a security outfit like the NIA, it will be improper for the head of NIA if he has been mentioned one way or the other to continue to be in that position. The right thing to do is to suspend him and thoroughly investigate the allegations against him. And if he's found culpable, he should be sacked with immediate effect. That is the only way that this government will restore the confidence of citizens about the whole mantra of change and anti-corruption upon which this government was elected in the first place.
All right, we'll go back to our correspondent, Maria. Now, Maria, is the NIA boss still with the vice president? And did you get other reactions from people at the State House?
Actually, the funny thing that happened was, after the first time the NIA boss came in, he drove back. So they now had to tell the State House correspondent that we should stay indoors because it's a private meeting with the vice president. So when the NIA boss went in and he came out, we actually didn't see him. We're still indoors as I'm speaking with you now. So that's just the thing. But the statement said the Mariah has ordered the thorough investigations be conducted on the allegations against the two top government officials, and they also set up a committee comprising the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami and the National Security Advisor Babangida Namoguno, which is actually headed by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. And the committee has 14 days to submit its report. So we can actually get people's reactions around here. But what I can say is everybody's quite surprised, and because of the nature of where we are, it's quiet.
It appears now it is clear that the Secretary General of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, has been involved in this initiative, in the award of contracts now for his involvement there. But how would you expect this to play out, especially with other reports coming out from the committee in charge of the investigation?
Well, what we have in the public domain is that the Secretary to Government is associated with one of the companies that benefited from the contract awards in the presidential initiative in the Northeast. If that is correct, that is a clear case of conflict of interest. And if a clear case of conflict of interest is established, then that is completely against what Buhari stands for in terms of his fight against corruption. And that is in the first instance, and that's conflict of interest. The second instance is, for instance, if there are issues of inflation, because I'm sure many Nigerians, and observers of Nigeria are aware that, it was alleged that those contracts are inflated. And if the contracts are inflated, that is another level, of fraud. So if it's established to have verifiable links with that company, and that is a clear case of conflict of interest, and there is an inflation on that contract, that's a clear case of fraud. I think on these two counts, it is very clear that, such persons should not be in any way associated with, the war against corruption that Buhari stands for. For me, it is a huge risk, if you ask me, to continue to keep the Secretary to Government if he's found culpable of some of these allegations against him at the moment. So for the president, it is important for him to demonstrate clearly that he's committed, to fighting corruption by making sure that not only the Secretary to Government, any other member of his inner caucus, that's involved in corruption, in cronyism, in giving appointments to, those who are, related to them one way or the other, I should understand that that is, political corruption, and whosoever that is found practicing political corruption, should know that that is even a much more virulent corruption than bureaucratic corruption, and those constitute burden on him and on the war against corruption. as far as they continue to hold sensitive position in this government. And it sends a wrong signal, really, to the international community that have been really supporting
all right,
the
I'm afraid,
Uche
Igwe, we have to drop it here, but many thanks for your contribution on TVC News R.